All right, welcome to another edition of Buc What You Heard. My name is Gene. You can reach me at Super Heavyweight on Twitter. You follow me, I'll follow you back. And tonight I'm joined by Michael Pless from Real Bucs Talk. You find him at realbucstalk.com. So he has some really good articles. And folks, this is the time you should be following him. They do really good work at realbucstalk.com. His partner Mark and the writers that they're bringing on, they really have a strong staff, and they're gearing up for this time of the year. So be sure to check him out. How you doing tonight, Michael?
I'm doing good, Gene. Glad to be back on, and yeah, it's that time of year. It's getting busy, and it's a good time to be a Bucs fan right now because kind of seeing what's going to be taking place as far as how this team is going to be shaping up heading into the 2018 season, and it's exciting times.
Yes, sir. That's definitely. And I want to the fans. We haven't really. I feel like I've been kind of neglecting the listeners, but I want to make sure that I'm including them tonight. That's very important to me. And the first question right out the gate was a pretty decent one, and I thought I would come to you with this. Should the Bucs cut Ayers? And they're talking about with $6 million. Do you see any more cuts happening before free agency? Very interesting question, considering as you look at the defensive line, and this, from my perspective, when I look at the defensive line needs help. There's no depth there. And if there's a cut, you have to ask yourself, who do you replace him with? And that's, that's kind of where I look at this. He wasn't a liability, but, again, that's a lot of money to be shelling out. I don't know how you feel about that.
Yeah, no, I agree with what you said. I think it's definitely a possibility as far as Robert Ayers, but again, I think that's something they're going to take into consideration and just see how it plays out. First you got to see who's available in free agency, and if there's a possible upgrade, first, that's the first thing. You have to make sure you can get a better player than Robert Ayers. And I think that's what they're evaluating right now. If they decide there's a better option, then yeah, I could definitely see them, letting go of Ayers or even maybe a William Golston. But again, I think those are two guys that I thought, had injuries throughout the year last year. Again, I thought Ayers wasn't as bad as people thought he was. I thought he played pretty decently. He was better as far as his run defense overall. But again, it's just I don't know. It's a tough decision because yeah, he's making $6 million. Is probably not, but I think that's something Jason Light and his staff are definitely evaluating right now as far as where they go. But it's like you said, it's about finding that upgrade. If that's there, then I could see the cut being an easy decision.
Yeah, most definitely. And the one thing that's really plagued the Tampa Bay Buccaneers over the last couple of years is injuries, and injuries at inopportune times. And it's just, that's probably the most frustrating thing for me watching this team. And I know injuries happen. That's part of the NFL, but just the level of injuries that we've seen, and right in the middle of the season. And it seems like when everybody comes back healthy, the team plays a little bit better. But just getting players that can stay healthy all year to your knowledge, do you think has Ayers played a full season since he's been with Tampa? I know he was injured when he first came. I don't think he's played a full season since he's been here, has he?
No, he's been in and yeah, he's been in and out, for both seasons so far, his stay here. And again, it's, like we've said, it's just about finding the right pieces. If you can find an upgrade, but also you don't want to leave yourself short, because when it comes to the defensive line, you want to have a rotation, you want to build that depth, and you want to have guys that can come in consistently and produce. So I think that's why they can make a case for them, keeping a Robert Ayers. Again, I think this is the last year of his deal anyway. So I think it's definitely a possibility he could stay, but then I could see why they would let him go, because his production just hasn't been there as far as his pay right now. $6 million is a lot. Same thing could be said for William Golston. They thought he was going to take that next step and be that consistent player, and he really wasn't. But really, the whole defensive line wasn't good last year. So maybe you just sum it up as that, and that's why they're bringing in a new coach and Bernstein Buckner from Arizona, and hoping to get those guys to perform better at a more productive level. So.
Yeah, I agree with that. And again, if you get upgrades on the defensive line, you've gotten rid of Chris Baker. If you can get somebody who's an upgrade, and we're gonna talk about a lot of different players tonight. I don't want you to think I'm ignoring your questions here. I will get to them, because I mean we are all thinking the same thing as from what I'm reading here. But kind of getting back to what you were saying. I've mentioned this on multiple shows since the season's over. The defensive line has never been given the attention that it deserves. I mean, over the past decade, I will say that they have not consistently addressed the defensive line. You get Gerald McCoy, then you throw a few free agents and a bunch of draft busts in, and you expect this defense to do something. You can't realistically expect your defensive line to do anything when you're not really consistently paying attention to it and getting the players that can actually come in there and produce. And that's what I've seen. And you build a team, you build a defense from the draft. I look at the Eagles. The Eagles are a good example. They have some veterans, and they have draft picks and free agents in that mix, and they have a good mix there. And the cool thing about watching Philadelphia, I'll be upfront. I hate their fan base, but just watching the Philadelphia Eagles play, they weren't necessarily getting sacks on the quarterback, but they were getting pressure. They got a sack when they needed to in the Super Bowl, but as it goes, they were continually getting pressure on the quarterback, making him uncomfortable, which did help the rest of the defense. So, even if the Bucs don't get that 10-digit sack guy, getting players that can get pressure on the quarterback and not get put on their ass, as we've seen, you mentioned this throughout the season when we've had shows that we're sitting here constantly watching defensive players getting up off the ground. That shouldn't be like that. The Bucs need to invest in players that have, as you call it, that want to get after the quarterback, and that's not what we've seen. We've seen actually a regression of this defensive line.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's why I've mentioned, some guys on my website, through my articles, is just adding guys that provide consistent production, guys that know how to get after the quarterback and have that relentlessness, that nonstop motor. That's why I put an article out tonight about Connor Barwin. A guy that's been a consummate professional, a guy that has produced at least 5 sacks over the last 5 seasons. And he just knows how to produce. He knows how to put up numbers. Of course there's, some critics, saying, oh, well, he only had 1 hurry per game or whatever. Well, that's pretty good. That's consistency. That's getting after the quarterback. So, finding guys like that. And again, like I've said in the past, it's about finding guys that are proven, guys that understand how to get after the quarterback. And that's what this team needs. Building a rotation is something that needs to occur. Finding as many pass rushers as you can. I know it's not going to be done in this one off season. I know it's not going to be resolved, but again, if you can find some guys that can help this unit and be more productive than they were last year, it sets you up for a better defense. And eventually that means more wins, because your offense is going to be the strength of your team. And that's what you got to put in place. You have to find ways. And I know a lot of people are talking about the big names, but that's not always the best route to go. I mean, sometimes you got to find the lesser guys that have, just know how to produce. So that's what it's about.
Yeah. And, I've mentioned this as well. You want to bring in somebody who is playing at a high level, and not just for their contract season. You want guys that have been consistently playing at a high level those are the kind of people you want to bring in. When you look at their game film, you're seeing somebody that's consistently doing that thing all the time. And to me, that's what's important. When you get a guy and you have 1 year, maybe 2 years of game film where they're playing productively, and it's just not enough at times. And that's kind of what's kind of hurt the Bucs. I look at Johnson, I look at Chris Baker as examples, guys that had not consistently played at that high level, and then here you are, you're stuck with a guy that comes in and he's not nearly as good as what you thought he was, and you're kind of you're disappointed with that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And, a lot of fans were talking about Mo Wilkerson today. That's going to be a hard pass, just based off the research that I've done after today, learning of the news and figuring out why he's let go. That's just another, Albert Hainsworth coming, or or Chris Baker for that matter. I mean, it's just a guy that you don't want to overpay for. Maybe I could see on a possibility of a 1 year deal, low contract, maybe, but I don't think Jason Light is going to add a guy. I think he's learned that he's got to find guys that want to and want to be here and be productive and have that mentality of getting better and wanting to win, and putting in the effort. I think he's going to find guys that want to bring that effort all the time. And, that's something that we haven't seen with Mo Wilkerson, and I don't think that's going to be a target for us. I just don't see it happening.
Yeah. So, outside of Connor Barwin, this is an interesting question. Are there any good defensive tackles? And I want to include defensive ends in there in free agency right now. We haven't seen everything yet. Nothing's really transpired yet. But is there anybody that we can look at as a potential, defensive player for the Bucs?
Yeah, I mean, I mentioned a couple, in Connor Barwin and Alex Okafor, I really like, who played well with Arizona back when Coach Buckner was his coach, and now he's the coach of the Bucs. So I think that's a good connection. As far as defensive tackles, obviously Star Lutele from Carolina is a guy to look at. Maybe a Dontari Poe, if healthy. Again, he's kind of risky, but he's a good player when he's on the field. I'm trying to think of other guys. There's really not much. I mean, maybe you could go after Adrian Claiborne, but again, he had high sack totals, but again, he only had he had a 6 sack game last year. So that kind of bumped up his production.
Yeah. Adrian Claiborne can't stay, he just can't stay healthy. That's
another thing. So yeah, I mean, really, there's not many guys out there. Again, I think what the Bucs need to hope for is looking in the trade route, maybe going after like a Shaq Lawson from Buffalo is a possibility. Maybe, you get lucky and some free agents become available, whether it's a Michael Bennett or Robert Quinn from St. Louis. Those are two guys to consider. But yeah, I mean, the Bucs are going to have to be creative in how they attack this. But I think, mainly it's going to come from the draft. That's where you find your star players, and they're going to have to hope they can get one of those guys in the first couple of rounds.
Yeah, that's going to be what needs to happen. Unfortunately, for this, the leadership here, they just didn't do enough with the defensive line. I know they threw some free agents and a few draft picks at it, but they really didn't address it. And yeah, I can't really, people are going to disagree with me on this. Jason Light had a choice, because when he came in, the defense was bad and the offense was equally bad. And it's like, where do you start? Do you choose one side and you fix it up, bring in your tight ends, get a franchise quarterback, get some wide receivers, or do you work on the defense and, bring in players that way, or do you do it balanced? I guess the way he chose to go about preparing this team or getting this team up to speed is the way where we are right now. And I look at all the moves that have been made, and the linebacker core is nice. You look at your tight ends, you look at your wide receiver, you've got a quarterback. I know a lot of people it depends on who you talk to, are still not sold on Jameis Winston. But to me, I think that he's done a good job, putting that offense together. They're missing a running back, and they took a chance on Doug Martin, and that didn't work out for him too well. So, picking up a running back, you could getting the right running back, whether it's through free agency or the draft, they could really fix the offense to where it would eliminate a lot of the issues that we saw last season.
Yeah, absolutely. And let me just address the chat here for a second. I see some comments in here. Michael Bennett is old. You know what? Go look at his production, buddy. The guy can play football. As far as, rotation players and Okafor and Barwin, that's what the Bucs need. You're not going to find legit, superstars in free agency. It's just not going to happen. Those guys don't become available. You have to find guys that can either play a role or can be productive. And those two guys that I mentioned are just that. And the same thing with Michael Bennett. Again, he's not a 10 sack guy anymore, but the guy can produce. I mean, the last couple of seasons, he's averaged at least 8 sacks a season. So I call that, pretty damn good.
Hey, that's an upgrade. That's an upgrade over what we've been looking at.
Yeah, so I just wanted to throw that out there. I appreciate the comments, guys. Though, keep up the questions. Though, keep them coming.
Yeah, and again, it's gonna make a difference. It's what you're looking at is you do have to get upgrades in these positions, and just kind of going back and looking at the film, and just seeing how many times the Bucs were overpowered on the defensive line. And I know I've been focusing on this, but I feel like this is the key. I don't want to say I feel like it is the key to the Bucs improving on the defense overall. You've got some good linebackers. You've got some really good linebackers. And then you're talking about fixing that defensive line where you're getting pressure on the quarterback. It's going to make all the difference in the world. And if you can get the right players in there, you can play a 4-3 or a 3-4, and you have options. You have a lot more options than what you have. And with the Bucs, depending on Noah Spence last season and Jacquez Smith, which neither one really worked out because of injury, it just put the Bucs in a really bad position. So they really have to, like as you mentioned, be creative to fix that so that we're not looking at the same thing this season.
Yeah, absolutely. And like I said earlier, the thing with free agency is, you got to set yourself up for the draft to take the best player available. And I think that's what, the Bucs are going to try to do, this offseason, try to, bring in guys that can add to their depth and allow them, pretty much be open-minded in the draft. And that's where you want to be. So you don't miss out on good talent, because frankly, this team needs more talent. And if you can add it at anywhere, at any position, you're going to be better off, because you have pretty much your team set, because you filled those holes in free agency, and you're adding more talent via the draft, which is where your stars come from. So I think that's, a good way to go.
Yeah, definitely. And I see a lot of people are talking about the cornerback position. But again, guys, I go back to what I was saying. If a quarterback has all day to throw the ball, they have all day to scan the field. It doesn't matter who's back there. You could have Sherman back there, and you could have any premier cornerback back there. If you don't have your front four aren't getting pressure on the quarterback, it doesn't matter. They've got all day long to scan the field, and eventually there's a wide receiver that's going to get open regardless of who's on them. So, to me, I think I'm hoping that the Bucs are really looking at this line and figuring out ways to fix the line.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it all starts up front. I mean, we've said this, the past couple shows. I mean, you have to build your front seven, and it starts with that. If you can't get the pressure on the quarterback, then your secondary is going to be, left on an island, and it's not good, especially in this scheme where we play a lot of zone coverage. You got to have that pressure up front. Look at it. 2016, we had pretty much the same secondary, and they did just fine when we had that pass rush, going, and that's when we won 5 games in a row, because we had We had the pressure up front, and guys were making plays in the secondary because they were being able to play aggressive and anticipate where the ball was going. So really, I mean, that's the key to any defense. You look at all the successful ones. You look at the Eagles; they just won the championship. They had a great pass rush. They had a front seven that could get after it consistently, allowed their secondary to be aggressive in the backfield, and they made a lot of plays. And that was the difference. You look at the game-winning play; they get a sack, strip, fumble because a great pass rush. I mean, that's what it's about.
Yeah, they didn't get a sack all game, but a sack when they needed it, and they were able to get that. I mean, I was watching. I've been watching the Jaguars and what the Jaguars did last year, and it's really it's something that I looked at how they drafted, and they put a lot of emphasis on that defensive line. Even there were some drafts where they had players in the fifth, sixth round, but they were still constantly addressing the defensive line. And to me, that's where it's at. And I look at teams like the Ravens. The Ravens always have a great defense. I mean, it's not always the best, but it's never been in a position like what we've experienced. So, you just never know. Let's see. Somebody, Tampa Sports, is it a possibility to trade up and get Bradley Chubb? Again, I don't know. I would love to see that guy in a Buccaneers uniform, but as far as trading up, I don't know who you would get as a trading partner. When I look at Cleveland and what Cleveland can possibly do, Denver is another team that annoys me because I don't know what they're going to do. So there's a lot of different scenarios going on because of the quarterback position, and you never know. But yeah, if you could get Bradley Chubb, that would be a great move right there for the Bucs. What do you think?
Yeah, I think it's a possibility. I mean, anything's possible. But again, I don't think this team is one player away. If we were, then I could see it maybe as a possibility. But right now, I think the Bucs would rather trade back instead of trade up. They need more picks if possible. I think that is something they'll look at. But really just got to take the best player that falls in your lap at 7. I think that's what they're going to likely do. And I think there'll be a good player there available. So, but again, who knows? I mean, Bradley Chubb could fall to 7. A lot of crazy things have happened. It's
we ended up with OJ Howard at 19, and I didn't even look at any film on him because I figured he'd be gone at 8 or 9.
Right, exactly. Again, now this is a pass rusher that is in the top 10. Again, those guys usually don't fall, so it's probably unlikely that he'll make it to 7 just because of the Colts needing a pass rusher. And again, depending on where the quarterbacks end up in the top 10, that's really gonna be the key to how this plays out. On as far as if those teams fall in love with the quarterbacks that are available via draft. And like I told my buddy Mark, Mark this about, there's always that human element when it comes to the draft because you have general managers in place and they fall in love with certain players. And that usually tends to make them, whether it's overdrafting or making a trade down to get that guy. It's just the human element, and that's what makes certain guys fall when they really shouldn't. You look at like Aaron Rodgers, for example. I know this is a way back, but I'm sure there's teams that wanted to draft him, but again, they looked at other players and fell in love, and it's just a human element. Guys just get overlooked at times, or they get underlooked. It just happens.
Yeah, absolutely. And when we're talking about the draft, I keep seeing somebody who has the draft. Somebody I was seeing, I think it was ESPN. They were talking about Minkah Fitzpatrick, the Bucs grabbing him at number 7. And again, unless they can address the defensive line, I don't know. I just I can't get used to that. I don't know. I don't know how I feel about, if it happened, if it does happen, it happens, I've been wrong. I was wrong about Beckwith. You know, you know, if you've watched the show, I bring that up all the time. I was wrong about him, but again, I go back to the defensive line. You have to got to put emphasis on that line. And I promise you, if you can fix the line, it's going to make everybody else behind you better, where your linebacker core and you know, even the safeties. But I feel like a lot of these positions are going to get addressed possibly in free agency.
Yeah, and you know, to touch on Minka Fitzpatrick, I don't have a problem with him. I think he's a very good player. Again, it's just when I watch him on tape, nothing really stands out to me as being elite. As far as and again, he didn't have a lot of snaps as far as outside corner, and he's kind of a projection to be an outside corner. But they feel he's going to be more like a safety hybrid, where he goes play safety, maybe play some slot corner. I know Jason Light was talking about today how he likes to have corners that can play inside or outside, and especially finding guys that can do that is very rare. So maybe, but I don't see Fitzpatrick being a fit for this team right now, because I feel like if we're going to draft a secondary player, I'd rather have a guy like Derwin James, you know, a guy that can play in the box and stop the run and be a physical force back there, to pair along with Justin Evans, who I think is a better fit at free safety. I just don't see a corner that's worthy of taking in the top 10. That's just my opinion. I know a lot of guys are high on Fitzpatrick, but I'm just personally, I'm just not high on him as other people are. That's just my opinion.
Yeah. And, you know, while we're talking about the secondary, what are your thoughts on Brent Grimes? I mean, do you think Brent Grimes retires? Do you think he stays? What do you think? What are your thoughts on that? I mean, a lot of people outside of the Bay Area that follow the Bucs don't really think that Brent Grimes is that good or was that good since he's been in Tampa, but he's been a major improvement. He pretty much stabilized that secondary that was just getting shredded, and he's been a difference maker when he's been playing.
Yeah, I think, you know, the Bucs definitely want to bring him back. I think, you know, Jason likes, you know, Brent Grimes to return, and they have mutual interest there. It's really on Brent Grimes if he wants to be back and play another season. But I mean, I hope he's back. I think he can play at a high level. I think when he's out there and healthy, I think, you know, majority of the season last year, I think he was playing hurt, you know, and that just shows the toughness that he has. But, you know, if we can bring him back and, you know, pretty fair contract, I think it would definitely be in our best interest to explore that. With that being said, there is a deep free agency pool as far as cornerbacks go, which is good. And I would expect the Bucs to add a corner or two via free agency, and maybe even add one in the draft in the later rounds. So I think that's definitely going to be a position that will be addressed. I know a lot of fans have been asking about the secondary and trying to upgrade. But I think you're going to see a mix of both. I think pretty much it's going to be a balanced attack as far as how we approach this defense and its upgrades via defensive line and secondary and maybe even some linebackers as well.
Yeah. And, you know, when you talk about that, the TJ Ward experiment and how, you know, the TJ Ward experiment looks like he's going to go out and test free agency, and I'm sure he'll get picked up by some team. It just something that didn't work out here in Tampa. And again, there's another player who couldn't stay healthy, and because of the injuries that he had, he could never get into the flow of this defense. So, you know, again, that's just another player that you bring in with certain expectations, and he just didn't work out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's fine. I mean, it just wasn't a good fit, and I'm sure TJ Ward will find a good team and make an impact. He's a good player. It just didn't fit as far as scheme wise and what the Bucs were trying to do on defense. And it just didn't pan out. And the way he got in trouble, you know, during midseason, and that just I mean, it just wasn't a good fit. Same kind of like Chris Baker, you know, it just didn't work out.
Yeah. Yeah. So, you know, and just thinking about, I wanted to ask you about this, because just to kind of see what your thoughts are. how different was the 2016 defense from the 2017 defense that we saw? The defense that, where it was able to close out games towards the back end of the season, and this year they couldn't do much of anything. What do you think? What was the major difference for you between that 16 season and the 17 season?
Well, really, I mean, you look at it, you go back to the 16 season. I mean, they pretty much started off the 16 season how they started the 17 season. It was a lot of miscommunication, a lot of guys out of place. The pass rush wasn't there. A lot of inconsistencies, giving up a lot of big yardage, points allowed. And then once they got to that Chicago Bears game, they kind of just figured things out in that 2016 season. And that's where Noah Spence had his big, breakout game. And he was really the difference maker in that 2016 season as far as how the defense ran. They finally got him going, and they were starting to make plays. I mean, it allowed the secondary to be more aggressive. And the way Keith Taney stepped up and started being that difference maker back there in the secondary made a big difference. But really, in 2016, the main difference was pressure, and they were getting turnovers. 2017, there was no pressure, and the turnovers were just not there at the timely moments, the key moments when they needed them, in the fourth quarter. You look at the 2016 season, a lot of those games they closed out because they got turnovers at the end of the game. You look at the Chargers game for one. I believe the Saints game was another. They had a bunch of turnovers. So just really difference of pass rush and turnovers. And that's really what it takes to be a good defense in this NFL league. I mean, that's what it's about.
Yeah, most definitely. And, those are really great points. And, and two, they did a lot better stopping the run, which was an Achilles heel for this team in 2017. So it's something they definitely have to get that fixed. Now, I do want to talk about the as we're looking at the Bucs. I'm going to jump to the offensive side of the ball. Sorry, looking at the chat here. But on the offensive side of the ball, what do the Bucs need to do? I personally, I don't think there's. I think there's the line. Once they if they can address certain parts of the line, for instance, the guard position. I know we talked about this last time. Whether they bring Marpet back over to guard and get a center, does that open up more opportunities to get players in if you get a center as opposed to looking for a solid guard?
Yeah, and we discussed this. I think it's definitely a possibility that they look at a center like, Ryan Jensen, if available via free agency, or if you want to go and spend big money and get a guard like Andrew Noel from Carolina, or, possibly a Josh Sitton from Chicago that just got released. So it's definitely, they could add some guards, and there's some definitely good guards available free agency. That's an option if they want to keep Marpet at center, or like I said, if they add a Jensen, you could put him at center, move Marpet back to guard, and then, if miracles happen, you get a Quentin Nelson at 7. You have a great offensive line for the future with Nelson Jensen and Marpet as your interior to go with Donovan Smith and DeMar Dotson. Pretty much solidify your offensive line and really have a chance to have a better run game and a better red zone offense if you look at it that way. So I think that's the best route to go. But we'll see what happens. I mean, again, it depends on who's available.
Yeah, and do you think that you think Sweezy stays around, or what do you think they do with him? You think
I think Sweezy as of now, I think is going to stay. Again, it depends on if his contract becomes guaranteed, once the new year starts, the new league year. I'm not sure on that as far as the contract details. I think they can cut him, past free agency. So I think they could wait on him if they want to see what upgrades are available. Again, if they can get a center, you move Marpet back to right guard. I think that pretty much, puts him out, and I think they'll go with a lesser contract guy and maybe like a Caleb Benenoch to be your backup guard / tackle, and then add depth, elsewhere. I think that would be the route they would look at. But again, they can wait on, cuts right now.
Yeah, most definitely. And as far as running back goes, when we're talking about offense, I know that's the next big. Well, that's a huge hole right there. I think combined, the top two running backs had like 850 something yards combined for Doug Martin and Peyton Barber. The two of them they didn't even break 900 yards combined rushing. That's a huge problem. That's something that's unacceptable and definitely needs to get fixed. For one, I don't see Charles Sims coming back. I don't see them entertaining that. He's going to test free agency, and I'm sure he'll end up somewhere else. With Doug Martin gone as well, it's important. This is a huge hole, and this is a huge component, that the Bucs need to make sure they have in order for this offense to work.
Yeah, absolutely. And I thought it was interesting that, Dirk Cutter didn't even mention Charles Sims today in his press conference, which was kind of a telling sign that he's pretty much on the way out. I think they're going to move on from him. He did mention Jacquizz Rodgers and Peyton Barber, guys that he likes. So I think they're definitely going to address the running back position. I think it's time to get some guys in here that can be, dynamic players as far as running the football. They need a guy that can, make big plays and be that home run type of threat. And I think that's something they're going to try to add, because the run game does make a difference, and it makes a huge difference with Jameis Winston in the play action passing game. And I think that's what they're going to try to get back to. And if you can run the football, it also makes your red zone offense that much better. And that's the big issue for the Bucs offense right now. I mean, that's something that they have to figure out. And I know Dirk Cutter and his staff are working on it. So I think that's definitely going to be guys we're going to be trying to add as running backs, either it's free agency or the draft. And I think they'll add a free agent, and I think they'll also draft a running back. I think they're going to go 1-1.
Yeah, you took the words out of my mouth. That's what I was thinking. B. Loggins had mentioned Jerick McKinnon, Lamar Miller, Crowell, and he mentioned Hill as well. Carlos Hyde, I'm not a big fan. He can't stay healthy. If you go back and look at his history with the 49ers, he just cannot stay healthy. And he would be a great addition, but we've already gone through 2 seasons of running back injuries. You need somebody who's going to be solid and consistent, that's going to make it through the season. So that's one of those things that you're kind of looking for.
Right. Yeah. I mean, guys that I like, Dion Lewis and Isaiah Crowell, I think would be, 2 guys to look at. I've highlighted Isaiah Crowell. I just think he's been underutilized in Cleveland, especially sharing the football with Duke Johnson out there. I think he's a good running back. I think he could be a guy that can be consistent back there and also have the home run threat ability. And I think you pair him up with a rookie, and I think eventually the rookie will, take the majority of the snaps. But you also have Crowell back there who can be dynamic in the pass game as well, and also block on third down. And the same thing with Dion Lewis. I think he would be the main target, a little more expensive just because of his pedigree and what he's done with New England. So I think those would be excellent guys to look at. And then the draft is pretty much loaded as far as running back. You have guys that will be available in the 2nd and 3rd round that you could definitely attack. My guy in the draft is John Kelly. A lot of guys haven't talked about him, but I love John Kelly. I like what he brings. Tennessee running back. He kind of reminds me of a mini Kamara, just the way he plays. I mean, his balance is really good, and I just like his game. I think he would be a steal. You could probably get him in day 3 maybe, just because of his size. He's a little smaller, but he can run with physicality.
Yeah. Do you see the Bucs possibly drafting a running back between 2 and 4, rounds 2 and 4?
Yeah, I mean, it really depends on who's there, in the 2nd round. I mean, I think if a Sony Michel, obviously, I know he's the big fan favorite, but if he's there at, their 2nd round pick, I think he's definitely an option. just because of the dynamic ability that he brings. Maybe a Nick Chubb in the third round if he's there, or trying to think of other running backs. Yeah, Darius Juice is another guy. Or is it Geis? I guess you pronounce it Geis, but he's another guy that could be an option. Ronald Jones, again, another explosive player. So, there's guys to be had, but Kelly's my guy. I just think he would be a good fit for this team and what they're trying to bring. And I think he'd be an excellent complement to Peyton Barber.
Oh yeah. Well, here we are. We're real close to combines, and just kind of wondering, is there anybody that maybe the listeners should be looking at or looking for in the combines to kind of see how they do or get familiar with?
I'm sorry, say that again, Gene.
I was just wondering, is there, with the combines coming up, is there anybody specific that, maybe the listeners should be looking at or looking for to see, just kind of get familiar with them?
A lot of this is, like we said off air, combine is get these guys and see how they are as human beings, see how they are as people. And really, comes down to the medicals and the interviews is the big thing for this combine. But as far as getting familiar with certain players, I mean, obviously the top guys, guys like Bradley Chubb and Saquon Barkley and Quentin Nelson, all those guys are guys to look for. Marcus Davenport, Arden Key, Harold Landry, those are all guys to look at and see what they can bring. Again, there's going to be smaller school name guys like Nathan Shepard, defensive tackle. That's a small school kid to look at. You look at the guards like Will Hernandez. Trying to think of the other guy. Alex Kappa is another guy. So there's plenty of guys to look around. But again, you're not looking so much as the numbers, what they put up. It's just really how they carry themselves. Are they competing out there? Are they hustling? And the main thing is, are they listening? Are they following directions? Because that's really a big key to this. Can they follow directions? Are they making sure they're getting it right on the first try? That's what coaches are looking at, and that's that's the important thing.
Yeah, it's like you can draft them, but can you coach them? And that's huge. And folks, when we talk about the combines, and I've talked to a couple of scouts, and I get the same thing. Basically, when you're looking at the combine, the GMs, the scouts, and the head coaches of these different teams, they already have their draft board locked up. They've already looked at game film. They've had their scouts at games. They've been checking on behaviors. They're not so much looking at plays, they're looking at behaviors. This is how this guy consistently does it. This is how this guy he has this mannerism, or this, these different things that they look for. So when they get to the combine, they pretty much got an idea of who they're actually looking at for their draft board and who they feel like would play a benefit for the team. And as you mentioned, with the combine, this is a chance to go out there and actually meet these guys and interview them and just see where their head is at, and that gives you a better idea of what you have. And, we still see we see a lot of times where they do miss, and you have guys that don't have it from the neck up, like case in point, McMuffin from Boise State. When he came, everybody thought this was a guy that's going to challenge Doug Martin for the, running back position. And that guy wasn't, he wasn't about anything really, and he ended up over in San Francisco. I'm not even sure is he still on the team or not, but that's just a good example of why it's so important to be able to analyze these guys and make sure they have it from the neck up, because that's what really separates some players from other players.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. That's what Jason Light was talking about today. He's like, the guys that I've missed on is, just not knowing how they are as a person, as far as their mindset, their ability to, how hard they're going to work every day, work ethic and just overall effort, guys that are either lazy or can't understand the playbook, like you said with McNichols or McMuffin, like you like to call him. But yeah, I mean, it's just guys like that. ASJ, for example. Now
Yeah.
he did pretty well, for New York. Maybe the light bulb switched on, but it's just like you said, neck up. I mean, that's what it comes down to. Even former head coach John Gruden, for the Bucs, he talked about, the great players understand the mental part of the game, and that's what makes a difference. I mean, you can be a good player all you want, but if you want to be a great player, you have to get it from the mental side. You have to understand what goes into the game plan, what goes into practice, and all those things, so you can be a better player consistently.
Yeah, definitely. So he's a good player. He actually, he made plays for New York, and I guess he's testing free agency to see if he can make a little bit more money. And hopefully he's got it all figured out. But he, while he was here, he didn't do it.
All right.
So that's kind of where we are with that. So what I wanted to do real quick is I wanted to talk about some of your articles. What new articles do you have coming up? And is Mark writing now?
No, Mark's handling the business side of things right now. But no, I mean, a lot of stuff what we have coming up is just mainly player profiles, whether it be free agencies or the draft. I'm going to try to get some more player profiles over the combine this weekend, and really talk about guys that just aren't being talked about, aren't being discussed, guys that I think are fits for this team as far as the Bucs go. And really, it's like I said, I do a lot of research as far as what can help this team become better, and that's what it's about as far as when looking at players. I mean, so just look for more draft stuff and free agency. That's really what we're hitting on right now, and try to get as much content as we can out there.
Yeah, definitely. And again, and I'll admit it, like, I don't have a problem admitting I was wrong. The Justin Evans pick last year, mm-hmm. and the Beckwith pick, they were great picks. I mean, these guys went out and they mm-hmm. contributed, and I really expect a whole lot more out of them, as we move forward. But again, that's the kind of thing that Jason Licht's been able to do is find players. And no GM is perfect. I'm happy with what Jason Licht has done as compared to Bruce Allen. If you compare what Bruce Allen and Mark Dominic did, you combine that. I'm happier with what Jason Licht has been able to accomplish. So that's just my opinion. Everybody's going to look at it differently, but that's just kind of how I see it.
Yeah, and it's funny, the Justin Evans pick, last year I actually got wind of the Bucs being interested in him in round 2, and they, I heard that if he was available at 50, the Bucs were going to take him, and I was kind of hesitant, and I was like, no, they're not going to do this. They're not going to take this guy. I was like, no, they're going to go running back or maybe take a offensive lineman even possibility. So, but then, they take him, and I was like, this is going to be, I don't know if this is going to work out, because he's just raw as a player. He was very inconsistent as far as a tackler. And then he gets into the NFL, he gets proper coaching, gets some good experience coming in, and he played great right away. I mean, he was a good player pretty much the whole year. And it just shows you how much work he put in and how much he cares about getting better. And that's a good sign if you're Jason Licht. I mean, you want guys like that. Same thing with Kendall Beckwith. Yeah,
exactly. And I remember I actually called you, I think, because I was mad about that pick, because I'm thinking, man, we need a defensive lineman, and here we are. Why are we getting another line? Why are we getting another linebacker? And I'm furious about it. I'm like, we haven't addressed the defensive line, and it worked out, man. I'm glad to have him on the team. And he's been a difference maker. And I think if they can fix some things, I think that this is going to be a really good team to watch here this year. So, I've heard all the negative scenarios about the Bucs only winning 2 games, winning 4 games or whatever. But again, there's so much parity in the NFL that, things can change. And I really believe if the right moves are made, I think the Bucs could be one of those teams that change it around. Hopefully they can shake off the curse of the what's the show on HBO, the Hard Knocks curse, and kind of move on from that. But again, you never know. And I'm not going to sit here and just, nickel and dime this team and, trash this team. 2017 is over. Let's see what this team can do in 2018. And that's kind of where I'm at with it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I expect this team to be better. I'm not sure yet if it's going to be a playoff season. Again, we have a long way to go. And like you said, it's about making the right decisions, making the right moves, and building a roster, building a team that's going to be able to compete every Sunday. And I think this team has the pieces in place, and it's still a relatively young team. A lot of guys that are going into their 4th and 5th years that are going to start progressing into the players that they're going to be for the rest of their careers. So I think that's a positive. And again, you had so many negatives that happened before the season even started last year, with the hurricane and 16 straight games and injuries, before the season even began. So,
right.
And then, Jameis Winston had his injury and he wasn't the same. And, just a lot of bad luck, really. And then you look at we're 3-7 and 1-score games. I mean, if you score an extra touchdown here or there, you're probably 9-7 again, and maybe in the playoffs. So it's just you just got to put the right pieces in place and hope you get the bounces, really, and hope your execution is a little bit better.
Yeah, and that's kind of how I'm looking at it. They just have to get out there and play as a team. And the one thing that I noticed, going back and looking at 2016, the communication was there, and it just looked like the team trusted these guys trusted each other a whole lot more, and they were more comfortable playing in their assignments. And that's where you saw a lot more turnovers because they're not worried about the guy next to them or what this guy's doing. They're worried about, I need to take care of this right here. And that's what you saw a lot of. You saw a lot more communication. And, they were just, they, again, like I said, they were playing as a team. And it's like something was missing in 2017 that you didn't see. And, again, I hope they can get that back. If it took bringing in a defensive line coach like a Buckner, where I've heard nothing but good things about this guy, could he be that the piece is missing that can turn things around? So, again, I'm glad they made some changes, even though they're minor changes, they're changes, as opposed to sticking with what didn't work, in 2017.
Yeah, exactly. And, I think last year, expectations, they were very high. And I think, with the Hard Knocks and that media driven, and we were all, expecting this team to be in the playoffs. And same thing with the media. I mean, a lot of media guys were picking us to make the playoffs, even possible Super Bowl. Predictions were being made. So, and I think some of that hype just got caught in the locker room a little bit too much. And I think it, led to the field, unfortunately. And then you had the kind of the cancers like, Chris Baker and TJ Ward. And I think that kind of crept in as well and caused a little, dysfunction. Same thing with, Deshaun Jackson and Jameis Winston and their issues, early on in the season. I think that, that definitely played a part. And then certain guys just didn't perform like they're capable of. I think, you look at, Robert Ayers and William Golson kind of had down years. Same thing with Vernon Hargraves, up and down season. So just certain guys, Noah Spence is another one, certain guys that we expected to be good and just didn't perform like they were expected to. Same thing with J.R. Sweezy. The list goes on, and it just just didn't live up to what we expected they could be. And I think, in 2018, I think they'll have the right mindset, and hopefully, like you said, they can get back to that family oriented kind of style and become more of a brotherhood like they were in 2016. And you look at the Eagles did that, and that's what I think this team needs to do.
Yeah. Robert Jones was asking about Mike Glennon. Do you re-sign Mike Glennon? Again, is it Glennon or is it Fitzpatrick? I don't know. Glennon, no. I saw enough in Chicago, and I've seen enough of it here. I'm good with Fitzpatrick. If they bring him back, I'm good with that.
Yeah, I think I'd rather see Fitzpatrick back. I mean, he went 2-1 with us, while Jameis was out, and he's shown that he can win. And I think the Glennon thing that's a thing in the past, man. You got to move on. I think that's something that just hasn't shown it worked. And to be honest, I'd rather see Ryan Griffin get an opportunity to be the backup quarterback and see what he can do. Obviously, you don't want to see him on the field. You want to see Jameis out there every game. But, I like to just go in it with the same three guys and let Griffin and Fitzpatrick battle it out and see who wins that job.
I like to see. I love to see Glennon go to Atlanta or something like that. That would make me kind of happy. But absolutely. Anything's possible. But that's kind of where I'm at with all this here. Wow, I can't believe it. We've already been on here. It's been almost an hour already, and I think we hit on almost every topic we wanted to talk about. Is there anything you wanted to talk about before we jump out of here? I'm gonna go through the chat here and make sure I haven't missed anything.
Yeah, I mean, touched on the combine, and again, like I said, this is a lot about medicals and interviews and finding out who these guys are. As far as free agency, again, we're not going to find, instant star impact players. They're just not going to be available. That's why I said we have to go after certain depth players, role players, guys that can come in and be productive and help this team. It's about finding roles for these players that you're bringing in and making sure they fit with the team. It's not about finding the best player. It's about finding the right player. And I'll continue to say that. As far as the draft, again, anything can happen. Certain guys can fall. I know Bradley Chubb, a lot of fans want him, and so do I. And it's possible. I mean, he could fall to 7, we know. And then as far as, I wanted to touch on this. We haven't touched on this yet, but guys, fans, this isn't Madden. Every player that becomes available, we're not going to be able to get him. I'm sorry. It's just not going to happen. There is a salary cap. I mentioned Tyrann Mathieu today, and Twitter exploded. So, he'd be a nice possibility, but again, we have to be realistic. I've seen fans, we should bring in Richard Sherman, we should bring in Malcolm Butler, let's get Earl Thomas. Yeah, all of that's great, but again, you can only do so much. And then
right.
Fans being pissed off about the Marcus Peters trade and all this. I was like, guys, I mean, the Chiefs called all 31 other teams, and they weren't getting much for him. And the most they got was a 2019 second-round pick. It just shows you, obviously, there's something wrong with Marcus Peters as far as a character standpoint. And teams don't usually let go of good players. I mean, if you're a good player, they're going to find a way to keep you. It's just that point. It's that simple. So obviously he wasn't doing things that they thought was a good fit in their locker room. And especially only being, I think he's 24, 25 years old.
Yeah.
That's just not a good sign.
Still got a lot of mental growing
again. Yeah. Again. So, this isn't Madden. I know in Madden, you can build dynasties and build teams however you want. Again, this isn't video games. There's a salary cap, and we can't get every guy. You have to think about not only this year, but you have to think about 3 years down the road and make sure your team's in a good standpoint. So just want to point that out. I know I sound like I'm complaining, but
no, you make a valid point. Yeah. And it's something I personally, I love the interaction with different people that I'm following on Twitter, or they're following me, and sometimes they get a little crazy, but that's a fan's perspective. But you're right. I mean, you have to face reality. This is not you can't just say, okay, I'm going to get this guy, this guy, this guy, this guy. And, you're going to have enough cap room, so like you said, 3 years down the line to sign somebody somebody major. It just doesn't work like that. So there's a lot to it. And I wanted to go ahead.
Yeah, you also have to remember that there's also 31 other teams that are trying to get the same guy. So you have competition there. And again, you only can go so high as far as price point. So that plays a factor. And then I also wanted to just talk a little bit about Brenston Buckner. I think that guy is going to bring a lot of juice to this team, a lot of energy, a lot of passion, and really going to help this defense line become more physical and nasty up front. Bring that mindset of just relentlessness and nonstop motor play that we need to see around here. And I think he's going to really help this defensive line become overachievers, I would say, guys, raising their play and make them play beyond what they're capable of. And I think that's something that we need going forward.
Yeah. I really do hope that's the case. Amazement 717 had a question for you. If Arizona and the Bills are on the phone wanting a quarterback, do you make the trade to get the Bills #2 pick, or you trade back to Arizona and ask for Honey Badger with the trade?
That's an interesting question. I probably wouldn't trade for Honey Badger just because of his contract. I mean, he's going to be due $19 million. That's why they're saying he's probably going to be let go as a free agent, and I don't see anyone trading for him. Now, I would say trading back to Arizona for their 13th pick is definitely a possibility. You could get their 13 and maybe a third rounder as well, and that would really boost your, as far as draft and getting more quantity. As far as Buffalo, I think it's definitely an option because Buffalo wants to get ahead of Arizona and get a quarterback. And, if you can get their first, their 2 first-round picks, that'd be nice. Again, I don't know if they'll agree to that. They could give you one of those first picks and maybe a second or, a future first-round pick, something along those lines. But yeah, those are definitely possibilities. I think trading down is real this year. I think it's a high percentage that it could happen. So definitely look at.
Yeah. And another interesting question: if the defensive line improves, do you see Buckner being the next defensive coordinator if Smith gets fired?
Yeah, I think that, obviously, if the defensive line, has a breakout year, that means Mike Smith is doing well on defense. Then, he's going to be successful. And I think that would probably mean Mike Smith probably gets a head coaching job. I don't think he would get fired. But I think Buckner would definitely be in line for a defensive coordinator position, whether that be with the Bucs or with another team. Yeah, I think definitely he's deserving of it.
Yeah. And, I've heard from a lot of players that, this guy is defensive coordinator quality. So, it is possible that, we could see that, or we will see that in the future. I'm really hoping that he can be that difference maker and, put a little fire and a little edge on this team, this defensive line to get things worked out. Robert Jones says trade down, draft 3 defensive linemen. Yeah, I would love to see that. Anything that can help, that would be an upgrade for basically what we have would be a welcome sight. And again, you can't just stop with the 2018 season. This has to be continual. This has to be something that we're going to see, for the future, where you're going out and you're adding a defensive lineman, you're adding a pass rusher, somewhere throughout the draft to kind of continually build up this line so that you do have that depth over a period of time.
Yeah, absolutely. Like you mentioned with Baltimore and, you look at the Patriots, those teams add pass rushers every year. And Trevor Sikkema from Pew Report, he made a good point today. He said, you draft a quarterback, an offensive tackle, and a pass rusher every year in the draft, and usually take one of those positions with a high premium draft pick, whether it be, in first round or day 2. So I thought that was a good point because if you have those positions, very strong, you're usually going to be winning. You're usually going to be a winning team. So, that's something that the Bucs need to look into for sure.
Yeah, most definitely. And I think that that's definitely going to make a big difference. Hopefully they can add that to the things that they focus on. I wanted to mention too, Rocco 171717. He said to tell you thanks for answering the Facebook messages, and it's appreciated. And that's kind of why we do this, because and I'm not taking shots at anybody. I swear I'm not. But we want to be able to answer the questions. We want to give you guys a voice, because there's a lot of times that people are talking, or I see it on Twitter all the time, where people are just getting ignored. They want to say, they're fans just like everybody else, and only certain fans or certain people get responded to. And I know how frustrating that can be. So, with Mike, especially with Mike will respond to almost anybody. Well, there may be one or two people that deservedly don't get responded to, but other than them, I would say that Mike is very good about responding to people. So again, that's what makes what we do is so vital, because there's just not enough of that where everybody gets to get their voice heard. And again, that's one of those things that we try to do when we do this show.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And thank you, Rocco. I appreciate, we chat on Facebook all the time, and love the passion that you bring, and excellent stuff. I mean, football, so it's good to talk with you and all the fans on here. B Loggins is another one that we talk, regularly. So, good stuff as always.
Yeah. And they always show up, and you just look at the chat. The chat's been rolling all through the show, and I really appreciate that. Rex Dillon from Buckaholics, thank you so much. I appreciate you taking time to check out the show. Robert Jonas, Amazement 717, who's always around to add his points on here. Marlon Williams, as you mentioned, B Loggins, Ricky Dugat. Let's see. I just hope I'm not missing anybody. If I missed you, I apologize. Marlon Williams, if I haven't mentioned your name already, thank you guys all for just being able to come on and give your point of view on this, because it's appreciated. So that's pretty much it. We're going to go ahead and wrap this up for tonight, and I want to thank everybody for your input on this. And again, we're going to do this next week. Hopefully, and we'll have a little bit more to talk about with the combine. And I'm personally waiting to see what happens in free agency. And guys, if you're not following me on Twitter, hit me up on Twitter if you have any questions, comments, or anything any shout outs or whatever you want me to get. I'll make sure to get those on next week. But I want to get you guys involved as much as possible. And anytime you guys have something or thoughts on how you think maybe the show could be better, let me know. I'm always open to this. That's what it's all about, is evolving and making the show better. So I want everybody to appreciate it, and that's what it's all about. So Mike, I'm going to go ahead and let you jump out of here. Whatever your closing thoughts are, I'll let you get those out.
Yeah, let me just want to answer Amazement 717's question. What will it take for this staff to remain in Tampa? Obviously, I think playoffs have to be in the picture. I think this team has to be contending in December. At least 8 wins, I think is a must for this staff and the regime going forward. The pressure's on. This team has to win now. It's just been too long. You're in a 10-year drought. This team has to win now, and I think these guys know it. So I think they're going to do everything in their power to make sure they put the best team on the field this season. But as far as final thoughts, we're going to have fun this weekend. Combine, I'm going to relax and watch a lot of it, have it recorded and go through it and see what I find, and analyze as far as information, and look at guys that I haven't heard of yet, and go watch tape on them, and So it's going to be a fun weekend, and I should have some more articles coming up this weekend, which will be good. More free agency stuff, more draft, and as always, follow me on Twitter at Real Bucs Talk. Make sure you follow Buc What You Heard, super heavyweight on Twitter as well. And yeah, I mean it's almost here. I mean 2 more weeks and we got free agency, and it's going to be fun.
Yeah. Oh, one more thing I wanted to bring up before we jump out of here. One more thing I wanted to ask you about the competition committee, and this totally slipped my mind. They're talking about capping the pass interference and changing it to a 15-yard penalty, just like what you see in college. Personally, I don't know how I feel about that. If they did it if they capped it like the first 3 quarters or something like that, and then in the 4th quarter, I just don't want to see where a team is fighting to get back and they throw this bomb and somebody just says, okay, I'm just going to interfere with the wide receiver just so that they don't get that penalty. Whereas it would have been a spot foul, but now it's only 15 yards. It just, to me, it takes away from the game when you talk about capping it.
Yeah, I mean, and a couple of guys on Twitter brought this up. You have to find a way to kind of distinguish, how severe the pass interference is. I think that's something that needs to be looked into, but I don't know if they can do that. Again, it's all about consistency, and the penalties nowadays are just not very consistent to begin with. So it's really a problem as far as going forward. What is pass interference, what is not? How many yards? Yeah, what's a catch? That's another thing that they're discussing, and then you have the whole 5-yard penalty. The first illegal contact is a big one, or defensive holding, which is an automatic first down. Just all those things that need to be looked at. And really, I don't think they should change it. I like how the rules are now, but again, it just comes down to consistency as far as the referees go. I mean, that's the big thing, and that's really what's causing these rule changes, because the refs are just not average. I mean, they're not good enough, unfortunately.
I really wish that they could, on a penalty like that, they could review it. There you go. Problem solved. Have somebody in New York reviewing it after the call is made, and try to speed up the process that way. But I know you want to get it right, and I think that would be the difference maker. But I just don't see capping a pass interference. I think that's going to benefit. It benefits the defense, which I guess with the NFL, I think that would think that would be the opposite. You'd want to see more scoring, and I don't know. I just personally don't agree with the whole pass interference thing. So that's just my opinion. But anyway, we've been on here too long, and I'm going to go ahead and wrap this up. I want to thank everybody once again. I mentioned as many names as I could on here, and I appreciate everybody checking out the show. And it really is appreciated. I mean, week in, week out, we do what we do, and we have fun with it. Plus, again, please follow this guy during draft time, because this is the guy you want to be listening to, because he's pretty good. He's spot on a lot of them. Well, we both missed on a couple, but we won't talk about that. That was 2017, and we're on to bigger and better things now. But please be sure to check us out next week, and we'll have a lot more things to talk about. And again, thank you so much. And that's pretty much it for us. And we're going to go ahead and jump out of here. So just remember, Buc What You Heard.